What's up, everybody? It's Mark from Red Rock Running Company, and we got a special teach today. We're here with three owners of Red Rock Running Company. We've got Eric Herdman, the original owner, and Josh Brimhall, owner number 2, and me, owner number 3. So, believe it or not, we're celebrating 20 years of Red Rock Running Company this month. I didn't know that until earlier this year when I actually reached out to Eric and I was like, hey, when did you found the store? 2008 was the number in my head. But Eric said he opened in December 2004. So we figured the three of us could get together and have a chat. So Eric, tell us the origin story.
Well, it started way back in high school. My first ever job, high school job, was in a running store. And I loved it. I mean, I always looked forward to going to work, never dreaded it. And so that just kind of stuck in my head. When I went to college, went to Ohio University, found a running store. Worked while I was in college at a running store. So it was one of those things that when I kind of left college, got out of that space, I was like, I'd always like to have a running store. And it just kind of went on the back burner because I thought, oh, that's just kind of a pipe dream, kind of a fool's errand, that sort of thing, never come about. But it always stayed back there. And anytime I would travel for speaking events or I get into another town, I'd always find a running store and check it out. I just loved it. And so finally, the moon and the planet and the stars aligned and everything came together, and I had an opportunity to do it in 2003. So that's when I started putting this together.
What were some of the original challenges you faced opening a store?
Actually opening a store. The running shoe companies, they're protective of already established businesses. So one of the things they do when you call them up and say, I want to open a running store, they say, where you live? Where are you thinking about? And I told them, and they're like, oh, we've got a already existing store in that area. Click. So you have to be, I had to be very persistent. So that rejection, the first 3 companies I called said no. So then I had to take a different approach. So that was the first hurdle, is just getting the accounts opened up, because you don't have a running store if you don't have running shoes.
That's true. Who was your first account that opened you?
It was Saucony.
Saucony?
Yeah.
All right.
They were the first ones. I called them up and they said, yeah. No hesitation, no pause, just I asked, and then there was that, yeah. And I thought, oh.
And back in 2004, what stores were here? Was Village Runner here at that time?
It was Village Runner, and Village Runner was in Henderson. And if I remember right, they still had that location. Josh, where was that? It was on
Stephanie.
It was on Stephanie and Henderson. Where was the one on the other side of town? It was right Charleston. They still had that. Yeah, they still had that location. So that was kind of blocking me. So that was here, and then what was the other place over off of Maryland Parkway, Josh?
Oh, was it a Fleet Feet?
It wasn't a Fleet Feet yet.
Foot.
It was an Athlete's Foot.
Yeah.
Oh, that was off Nellis. That's right, that was it. Yeah, and he was kind of ish specialty running at that Athlete's Foot. So that was it. Fleet Feet wasn't here yet.
How did you design the logo?
I called my best friend the other day and asked him this, who designed the logo. And I said, I don't remember how the original logo came about. And he said, we were sitting at Red Rock after a run, and we were looking at the mountains, at the mountainscape. And he said, you know what, that would be a really good logo. And I said, let's do it. So that's how the logo came about.
That's great. How long did you have the store?
What was it, Josh? A little over 5 years, right?
I think I had purchased in 2010.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, sounds about right. So
you had the one location on Cheyenne. How did you pick that spot?
Far enough away from everybody.
That's right. The shoe company said,
yeah.
as I mentioned a moment ago, when I had to change my approach, instead of calling and saying I'm opening a running store in Henderson or Las Vegas, I had to say, how far do I need to be from your already existing accounts? And that's what I always say forced me, but that's what gave me the opportunity to open on that side of town.
And you were in that corner, the end spot.
End spot.
And you moved it to the kind of the corner spot there, is that right?
I think a couple years after I purchased it, even after I'd opened this location, I decided we needed to grow that space. It was a small space. I don't remember what the square footage was.
It was just over 1,000 square feet.
Yeah,
there was a running store owner in Southern California that I visited with right before, about 4 months before I opened the store up. And we had not locked down the space yet. And so when I went over to visit him, I said, if you had to give me 2 pieces of advice that would, for lack of a better word, guarantee my success, what would they be? And he didn't hesitate. He said the first one would be lease, rent the smallest space possible. I mean, grossly small. And don't expand and don't expand and don't expand until you absolutely have to. And that was sound advice.
Yeah.
So that's why that space was so small.
Yeah. Did you ever have an oh crap moment? What have I got myself into?
Yeah. The first one, I opened the store the day after Christmas in 2004. And I sat there for 8 or 9 days. No one.
8 or 9 days.
It was probably around the 9-day mark that someone, I was sitting there, I was cleaning. Of course, nothing needed to be cleaned because there was nobody there, but I had to keep doing something, and all of a sudden I heard the ding at the door. The property, that space was a commercial manufacturing equipment space, tools. They rented heavy duty tools like jackhammers and that sort of thing before I had it. Door dinged, I jumped up out of off the floor where I was working and cleaning, and I said, "Hey, good morning." He's standing there looking around, and he says, Where are the jackhammers?" And I went, "Oh." It's about a mile down the street, they just moved. So when I thought I had my first customer, I didn't. That was the first oh shoot moment, like, what's going on here?
And when was your first, oh man, this might be something?
Probably around the 9-month mark. We'd had some customer flow at that time, and somewhat predictable, right? We could pretty much predict our days, especially our weekends. We knew what was going to be going on. And someone came in and said, "Hey, my assistant said I need to come here and get fitted for shoes." And so I started just doing my whole thing with that gentleman. And when I went in the back, it hit me. Wait a minute, we must be doing something right. This person who, obviously this is her boss, this is a leader, she has gone and said, "Hey, you need to go here." This said a lot, right? She put herself out there because we had taken care of her enough that she's going to refer somebody in that if we don't do a good job, that could reflect poorly on her. That was that moment where I'm like, I think we're onto something here.
Yeah, so that's the best compliment we could get. So customers, make sure to share that with your friends.
Absolutely.
So you got the store for 5 years. How did you and Josh meet?
Josh, we knew each other long before
Yeah.
I had the store.
Yeah, years.
Oh.
We used to run together occasionally, cycle together. I don't remember how we met.
I think was it a Village Runner that we met?
Possibly.
I think it might have been when Mike had the store.
Because I worked there.
Yeah.
You worked there.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody went through Village Runner.
Everybody went through there. I think that's probably where we met. And it was one of those things where, like, hey, I'm going to Red Rock to run, or I'm going to Bootleg to run, you want to go? And next thing you know.
And we had those discussions. Both of us were like, we could do better. You know, we could do better than this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's, I don't say that to pile on Village Runner. I enjoyed my time there, but we knew there was an opportunity. And I guess Eric beat me to it. I wasn't in that mindset just yet. I knew down the road that would be a good opportunity. So,
And
yeah.
you also, I mean, you worked at running stores too, like in Utah.
Yeah, I
right?
saw
If
a
remember.
running company
Yeah.
when I was running at the University of Utah. When I moved to Phoenix, I worked at Runner's Den.
Oh, the original pancake run, yeah.
And Runner's Den, I still talk to some of those guys.
Soul Sports owns that. They just bought it.
I heard. And friends of mine also beat me to it. They opened up some running stores. But I knew it was something I always wanted to do. And yeah, we got to a point where Eric and I, we were out on a ride or something.
We were.
And I
We were on a
started
ride.
saying, you know what do you think if I were to open a store? And you're like, you were like, yeah, you're interested in that. And I said, yeah. You know, and it was a weird conversation because I was like, you know, he's got a store. I don't want to step on his toes. Because like you said, brands and vendors back then, and I don't know, Mark, if it's still this way, very protective of accounts. So you couldn't even open a store within a 10-mile radius of another store. And back in the early to mid 2000s, the city was still growing So having a store over there and one here, you were limited. There was no Southwest Valley. So you really had to think it through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the, that cycling ride or whatever we were doing, running together, that was more of the catalyst of what got that ball rolling. Eric was in a position where he was like, you know what, this might be a good opportunity. You know, you're looking for this, I'm looking to do this. And I want to say that was 2009 maybe.
Probably.
Roughly.
Yeah, I think it was
when we
summer
started
of
those conversations.
Yeah, and then it was lots of Starbucks.
It's a lot of, yeah.
Meetings after that.
Yeah, because it's a lot. I mean, you got the ball rolling, which definitely was nice, but I didn't know anything about. I was a runner. And I romanticized the idea of owning a running store because I was a runner and I worked at running stores. It's a totally different ball game, as you know, Mark, to fit people for some shoes and work in a running store versus being behind the doors on the back end looking at spreadsheets and P&Ls, and it's not even the same job.
Oh no,
You know,
I
mean,
might have romanticized it a bit myself.
Sure, and that's what makes it great, but I always loved being out on the floor, working with customers. I just never had the opportunity to do it as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody.
We're hiring.
They will.
So,
You never know.
So 2009, 2010 comes along. Josh, this won't be the first thing you learn about Josh, but Josh is a very accomplished ultra runner. At the time, a sponsored athlete with Pearl Izumi and went on with Adidas. What's your 100 mile PR, Josh?
Geez, 16 and change. I don't know. It would have been a mountain 100.
So lots of
I was
elevation.
gonna say it was probably the ugliest course
Yeah,
ever.
maybe
Technical,
like
rocky,
San
hilly.
Diego 100. I'd have to think about it. I mean, I don't.
Yeah. So the challenge, Josh can knock out 100 miles. I can't even drive 100 miles that fast. But now he's taken over a running store. What was your holy crap? What have I done moment?
Oh man. So like I said, I didn't know a lot about the business as much. I thought I knew about the business because I've worked at running stores, but you don't really know until you have to deal with that. I think that time period, starting in 2010, there was a lot of growth, but around 2013, maybe 2014, you started to see just explosive growth. So I don't want to say it was easy for a few years, but until about 2013, 2014, we opened the doors and people came in. You know, people still wanted to be fit. This was prior to Amazon taking off. It was prior to any of the online, buy your running shoes online. That was almost unheard of. You always wanted to come and try on your running shoes. I don't want to say we were spoiled, but we were slightly spoiled. We opened this in maybe a year and a half, 2011, 2012. Yeah. And to get the Henderson location open here in Green Valley, it took me a long time on the phone with vendors and reps and saying, hey, I know there's a store down the street, but this is a great space, and that store isn't local. I'm local, I live here, I train here. And for a while, we didn't think it was going to happen. Some major vendors, Brooks being one of them, was not going to open us up. And I had to make a choice. And back to your oh crap moment, I decided, and my wife decided, we talked it over, and we said, okay, well, I guess we're not going to have Brooks on our shoe wall. And you got to remember, this was prior to Hoka, prior to On. Brooks had 50% of your sales in a running store at the time. And I remember talking to the rep at Brooks, Dave Adams, who is a great guy. And he was probably in a tough position, and I told him, I said, we're going to give it a go anyway. And I think at that point, he said okay, and about a day or two later, he reached back and said, you know what, we can't have you not carry Brooks. So, but there was this.
You're in Vegas, you rolled the dice.
Yeah, and it would have been a very, I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, this is a bad idea. Not to have the #1
right.
specialty run brand in your store at the time, it would have been, oh crap, yeah. And I was sick for a couple days until he said, you know what, we're going to give it a try. And even then, we had to, it was a little touch and go, because I had a relationship with the running store Village Runner, and they are just a couple miles away down on Stephanie.
Yeah.
And it was ugly for a bit, relationship-wise, and I could, the tension was in the air.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was nervous about this location. I obviously it worked out great, and I'm glad to see it. I think this is a great location, and I hope you agree. Obviously you do.
Yeah, yeah, this is a great spot. So, economic downturn, how did the Great Recession affect business for you?
Well, when it hit, I didn't know what was going to happen with running, with the trends, the store, and I was very scared. But the customers told me. They told me what was going to happen, because they would come in and say, hey, I need another pair of Adrenaline GTSs, or I need to be fitted, and we do the fitting for the shoes. And then we would say, hey, about some socks, shorts, tech tee, something like that. And they'd be like, nope, just the shoes. And that pattern continued. And then I realized, I see what's going on. And I looked at my numbers, and clothing completely dropped out of sales. So then I asked some customers, some really good customers. They said, hey, I noticed you keep coming in and buying shoes, but you would normally buy some socks and some other things. Can't afford it. I said, but why the shoes? Therapy. Handles the stress. I can run in old shorts and an old t-shirt, and I'm good on socks, but I got to have the shoes or I'm going to get hurt or injured or something like that. So that's how I made it through that period of time. I just doubled down on shoes and pulled back as much clothing as I can, which, as you know, the orders are placed months and months ahead, and you get penalized. At the time, you got penalized if you canceled too much. You had some wiggle room. So I had to live through a bit of awkwardness with that, but that's what happened.
Yeah, Las Vegas, I've been telling you for 7 years that running's the best therapy. So we got the original owner here
That's right.
confirming that. Josh, any economic, nothing was as bad as 2008.
Yeah,
I've lived here my
yeah.
whole life, and I think 2008 was the only recession that ever touched Vegas.
Yeah, Eric went through a global economic downturn. I think the impact that we had, I want to say around the 2015, 2016 timeframe, was more of a crisis of the outdoor industry. You had the Amazon, Prime came in, people could buy their shoes online. You had your own vendors that were putting up their own websites at the time, and you were literally competing against them in some ways, which is frustrating, understandable. Big box stores at the time went under. Sporting goods stores, I'm trying to think of what was it? Sports Authority.
Yeah.
Some of those stores, when they started going under, that affected some of our own brands, our own vendors that we were carrying. I think there was a lot of change in the industry at that time. I wasn't sure what to do about it, and nobody, reps included, brands included, I think everybody's feeling their way through that. So not the same as Eric's, but definitely a moment where we noticed the sales changing, and just the way we were going to have to do business was going to change. We were starting to see a difference in, instead of people coming in all the time and getting on the treadmill for a proper running shoe fit, it would be more of, I already know I need this, you guys fit me, I can get it here for this price, are you guys willing to match that price? Do you have this color? And sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. So we had to react to that during the time, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge challenge that continues for us, and we can talk about that in a minute. I wanted to ask, you guys have both mentioned Village Runner, a couple other running stores. At one time there was even a Fleet Feet here. How did Red Rock Running Company survive?
Fleet Feet was a mile and a half away from the Cheyenne location. And hey, they do a great job when they set up the store. I mean, they bring it in and it's set up. I mean, there's something to be said about that franchise setup. So this was no joke. I had to take it very serious.
A lot of corporate support.
A lot of corporate support. I mean, manuals, training, I mean, they're on point. And I know some folks are probably putting this together. Wait a minute, how are you not allowed to open up?
Right.
But for, you had to be 10 miles away from Village Runner in Henderson, but yet Fleet Feet could open up. It's because of the structure of that corporation. They can pretty much name their shop. We're going there. And that's what they did. This question kind of defines the success that at least I had when I had the store. we beat them with service, and not just customer service. I have a good friend another professional speaker. His name's Scott McCain, and he speaks on the customer experience, and not only that, but how to be distinction. And so one of the things that we did really from the beginning, we didn't know we were doing it, but once Fleet Feet appeared and we had to do something, we realized that we needed to create a customer experience, one that they couldn't, that they didn't deliver, one that Village Runner couldn't mess with and couldn't do. And so we built that, and that's one of the things that they just couldn't overcome the momentum of that customer experience that we were giving.
And were they still around when you took over?
They were, yeah. You know, we still had the Fleet Feet, even Village Runner. There was competition. I agree with Eric. You almost had to look at what they were doing and figure out an avenue to get around. Like, okay, they're going to do this. I can't really compete with that. You know, they're going to always upsell you on some insoles or something. That's part of their corporate, motto.
That's their business model.
What am I going to do? And I think in my mind, I thought, you know what, I got to hire people that are involved in the community in running, that are out at group runs, that are in touch with the local trail running scene that was growing at the time. How do I, because it's tough. It's tough to go up against a corporate entity. They have a lot of money and they have a lot of pull vendors. So you're always looking at different avenues to compete with that. But yeah, customer service, that had to be a given. And then you almost had to think, okay, what else can I do now? Because they're going to have all the same access that I'm going to get with these vendors. Now, how do I differentiate?
Yeah, I had to look at it for what it was. It was a corporate entity. It was a corporation, and being a speaker, working with corporations, I knew that they were fixed. They had straight line thinking in so many areas. I didn't have to have that. I could go this way, I could go that way, I could go over, I could go under. And so we did not do anything against them. In fact, we would even tell people from time to time, they're like, I know there's another store around here. It's right down there.
Sure, because you want to make the customer happy.
That's right. I wanted to make the customer happy. That was part of the experience. Wow, they must be very confident in what they do. They just told me it's right down the street. So we got a lot out of that. Again, treating the customer, giving them that experience that they wanted.
Yeah. So 2017, 2018 comes along, and what's the genesis of it's time to move on?
You've been doing this 7 years now?
7 in March, yeah.
You get to a point, and I don't know if you would agree with this statement. I don't know if Eric would either, I guess. I'm just going to say, I got to a point where I felt like I had done everything I could do. Now, maybe it's debatable for sure. But personally, I felt like, okay, I've got a couple locations going. We had a third location for a while, which I think we were a bit ahead of our time in that spot, clearly, because now it's working out great for you. I just felt like I had gotten to where I didn't even need to be in the stores anymore, and that it almost made me feel like maybe it's time to move on. So there was a little bit of like, okay, I've done what I can do here, and I wanted someone to take it that I thought would do more. And there were a lot of discussions about, okay, should I sell it to a corporate entity like a Fleet Feet, who did make offers, multiple offers. There were other people locally who were interested. There was St. George
Running Center. Steve Hooper, we talked to every now and then.
I mean, they looked into it for a while. It was important when I made that decision to leave and go back into education that I really wanted to leave it with somebody who was involved in the community. Even if it would have cost me money, which it probably did. I mean, there were different offers, and it was important that we kept that flow of, okay, Eric, myself, and then I really wanted someone involved locally. And you were, you and Josh you guys were me, and you were Eric when we first started. You were like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for. You were enthusiastic, and I felt like for the past couple of years I'd lost a little bit of that enthusiasm for whatever reason. I'm sure you get that with any career, no matter what it is. But you guys were highly enthusiastic, which made me happy. I just didn't want to see it turned over to somebody from out of state or didn't have a vested interest in seeing the running community grow in this city?
Yeah, it's funny, you know, I tell the story all the time that I got the email because I'd been a customer that it was for sale, and I deleted it because I was like, God, I have 2 jobs already. What do I want to do at the running store? And then the next morning I'm out on a run, and this will tell you everything you need to know about like how naive I was. I was like, man, my kids are getting older. They'll probably want, you know, how fun it'll be for them to get a job in a running store and work with dad. And it was nothing like that, people.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. But I sent an email to Josh Brimhall, and I'll never forget, you wrote back, was like, you saw my EDD, and you're like, yeah, doctor of education, and we have practically the same degree and studied the same field, and I'm nowhere near the accomplished runner that Josh is, but we had
Not
some
true.
common ground there.
Not true.
And it was fun. So let's turn it around. Any questions you guys have for me?
Yeah, I do. I've been thinking of
This
a
is where I'm
question.
going to heavily edit this, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it like having 4 running stores? I mean, how do you do it? What's a day like?
Yeah, I spend the day chasing my own tail. You know, I have a to-do list. It's a mile long, and then it's often overcome by events, right? It's funny. Josh mentioned earlier that he was not in the store a lot more. I found that now I'm to the point where I'm just not in the store a lot. Most of my work is outside of the store, answering emails, paying bills, talking to vendors, seeing what kind of deals we can get, putting out fires when they come up.
Social media, you do a great job with social media.
Social media was my goal for 2024.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to, you know, I really wanted to be able to. Such a big part of what I believe in Red Rock Running Company is getting my message out, and we do it with the newsletter, we do it in the store, but social media is a great platform for that.
A lot of reach.
So you know, and the best, and I say this on the radio too, you know, the best creative moments I have when I'm just out on a run, and an idea will just come to me like, try this, and sometimes it's a great idea, sometimes fall on my face. But having 4 stores, I mean, Vegas is big enough now. There's 2 million people in the valley. It's so much different from even 2015. And yeah, Vegas has grown. What I really would love to have is that Vegas isn't Eugene, Oregon. It's not Boulder, Colorado. It's not Flagstaff. We don't have that super elite athlete here. But I'd love to get that running community growing and a little stronger. And so we've started doing events now. We time our own 5Ks and stuff, and I think that's another way to get that going.
When do you get your run in?
Whenever I can. My streak is
What's
still
the
going.
streak?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm at 2,944 today. 2,944
Wow.
days. We're gonna have a big party in February when we get to 3,000. I hope you guys will come.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Well,
is.
It's almost as impressive as that beard. How long have you been working on that?
The beard, yeah. But it's you know, I used to only have it in the winter, but I got remarried here a few years ago, and my wife likes my beard, and then I shave it. Every time I shave it off, I'm like, who's that guy? So I just left it on now. I was at Costco once, and a guy with a beard told me a beard state it keeps you cool all summer long. So
What do you say when people ask you, what do you do?
so I'm a small business owner. Yeah, yeah.
What do you see? I'm curious, you know, because you're getting a different feel than Eric and I got with the specialty run market, and you go to the retail shows, TRE. Where do you see this going? Like what's on the horizon that's kind of caught your attention?
I'm going to use a lot of terms that people who are watching this might not understand. Run specialty is what, or a store like Red Rock Running Companies. It's a running specialty store, running specialty industry. There's some trade shows you can go to throughout the year. The running event, TRE, is a big one. The industry has changed even in the 7 years since I've taken over. It used to be there would be SKUs or shoes that you could only find in a running specialty store. The 880 from New Balance. From my time, Brooks had what was the counterpart to the Glycerin? They named it the Glycerin GTS now, but it used to have another name. I'll remember it in a minute. But you could only get those in running stores. That's gone. And the reason, like the reason for people coming to a specialty run, used to be you could only find a Brooks at a running store, right? Now, I mean, now we've got REI, we've got Dick's Sporting Goods, we've got Nordstrom Rack, we've got everywhere. So the market's saturated, and our biggest competitors is not REI, it's not Dick's. Our biggest competitor is the brand themselves. So when a person can buy, you know, this Saucony Endorphin Elite from Saucony.com, it makes it a lot harder to make that sale for us. So the industry's changing. Like, brick and mortar is not going to go away. It has a place. Market share will decrease to online, and I think we're going to reach some kind of equilibrium at some point. But we've got to change our game and really adapt to what we do. So one thing, and this might be way more information than you guys had asked.
No, I'm curious about this. What do you have to do? What does your team have to do?
One thing we really focus on, and which is kind of you got started with the running community and going to the group runs and going to the trail runs. And I'm more of a message that, like, we're more than just a running store. And I shouldn't say just a running store. We're more than a running store. We get so many people coming to us that need those all black shoes. Service industry, we sell a ton of all black shoes in this, and Vegas is a service town. Doctors, nurses, casino and blackjack dealers, anybody who needs to stand on their feet, we get so many people coming in. And it doesn't just have to be running, like walking has so many of the same benefits as running. So I try to get that message out there. If you want to make a change in your life, there's no better way. Just go for a walk every day. And all you need for a walk is a great pair of shoes. And we got them.
What's the motto? Every run's a good run, every walk's a good walk, right?
You've heard my radio ads.
Somewhere, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, every run's a good run. That's what I would tell myself when I started this run streak in, I don't even remember when I started it. I'm going on over 8 years now. But on the days when I didn't want to go, I'd always think, like, every run's a good run. I always come back in a better mood than when I leave.
You're not going to regret it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's impressive. I mean, it's an impressive streak.
Yeah.
I don't say that lightly.
It is. It's
I've been
very
running
impressive.
a while. That's an
Yeah.
impressive streak.
Well, I've never had a 100-mile day.